Most producers get stuck making the same melodies over and over, but in just 30 days, I took a producer's melodies from sounding like this to this. So in this video, I'm going to break down the 3 simple steps for exactly how I help this producer so that you can apply them to your beats as well. So I want to introduce you to Seppi. He's a producer I've been mentoring for the last 2 months or so. He came to me with a few problems, a few struggles with his production and his career. And one of the main ones was that he wasn't really able to kind of translate the ideas melodically that he had in his head to his DAW. So the first thing I had Seppi do was something that I don't see too many producers doing, but when you actually use this intentionally, it makes a huge difference. Limit yourself to 3 specific instruments.
Does that include like a pad for like layers? Because you added a layer to it.
Nope.
So no layers, so just 3.
You can layer. You can still layer with the same instrument. You can be creative with it, you know, piano, and then underneath it, say, put another piano and just wash it out like crazy with some reverb, pitch it up, try and reverse it, you know, stuff like that. But just get creative with it, man. This is why I want to box you into just 3 instruments, because then it'll stop you thinking about, oh, I need to add a pad, I need to add this, I need to do that. It's just, I've only got three instruments, you know, I've got to make the most out of these 3, you know, and do what I can with them. Literally just had him limit his creative process when making melodies to 3 instruments. One for the low end, like a guitar bass, sub bass. One for the mids, like a piano or a guitar. And one for the highs, like a flute, string, vocal chop, something like that. And it really forces him to think creatively. He's only got a few instruments to choose from, so he really has to maximize each of those elements in order to make a nice melody. And it also just clears up any mud. It stops sounds from drowning each other out. And you really just have like clear elements that make up the entire melody. Big step in the right direction, and the main lesson for you guys watching is really try to separate your production, your melodies especially, into 3 groups: lows, mids, and highs. Let me show you a quick example of what I mean. Right here we got an old melody that I made. We've got some keys, it's just like a Rhodes element. This would be my mids. Okay, all right, and then we got this sub bass that comes in. This is the lows. Now you've noticed that the mids have been occupied and the lows have been occupied. We've got one more slot right at the top for something high. So in this case, I went for like a little vocal chop. Simple, but really effective. And there's a ton of space for an artist to do their thing on it too. So once Seppi had simplified his melodies, the next step was to get Seppi to just give each element in the track room to breathe. Now his old approach was just stacking instruments on top of each other. Everything was fighting for space, so I just introduced him to a real simple but effective concept. Then the next step, you know, in terms of melodic stuff, is keeping the same kind of mindset, but then the next thing you can throw in is like a little bit of call and response. Now you kind of got it going on with one melody, but the next step would be to throw in a similar sound to kind of respond to it, you know, so we can just like open up a bit more space. So, and then cut this out like that, and cut this out as well. And then these are the gaps where you come in with something else, you know. What most producers will do is they'll just keep adding layers, and then they'll maybe put this flute, and then there'll be another sound on top of it, and another sound, and everything just starts fighting for space. You just keep it open. It can still sound complex, but every layer is just simple, and it's, you know, they're all going to sit in each other's pockets. So yeah, call and response. Just think of it like a conversation. One instrument plays a certain phrase, and then another instrument responds to it. That way your instruments aren't, you know, fighting for space, they're complementing each other. Let's come back into the track we had from earlier. We got this top line, we got all this space, and we've got these gaps right here, and we can just fill them with another instrument. Now, in this instance, I just went with a couple different flutes, real simple patterns, but just from looking at it, you can kind of see that these flutes come in sort of in the gaps, right in the pockets. And yeah, once I play it through, everything has its space. Vocal, flute, different flute, back to the vocal. Easy. Once Seppi had the basics down, you know, only using a few instruments, using limitations, and then incorporating call and response, it was now time to add just more depth and more balance to his melodies. You know, he had good elements in there, but everything still felt a bit flat. Sonically, it wasn't feeling 3D, everything was kind of linear. So the next step in the process to help him get better was just to introduce some basic mixing concepts that, again, kind of get swept under the rug, but it just allows you to add more depth, more color, more expression with the melodies, and almost just make them feel more 3D, like you had envisioned in your head. So here's how we did it. First thing was to add stereo width to certain sounds, typically the lead sounds, maybe the mid sounds as well, like your keys and piano. This just really adds more width to each element in the track, more separation, and just makes the track feel bigger in general. The next thing was some basic panning. We had some of the sounds sit to the left, some of the sounds sit to the right. Typically, again, I would do this with the lead elements in the track. I also had him experiment with plugins like Shaperbox or Pancake if you want the free version, just to automate this process and add some actual movement to each element. Another technique was back to front panning, i.e. reverb and delay. I like to call it back to front panning because essentially that's what you're doing with a sound when you're using reverb. So many producers just slap reverb on every sound, but when you understand what it's doing, essentially you're pushing it to the back of a room. The more reverb you add, the more in the distance it feels. You're actually panning it further to the back, so you don't want to add heavy reverb to your main sound. You want to add it to elements that you want to be more felt than heard. And then the last technique, which is a really good one if you want to separate two sounds that are kind of in the same space as each other, using mid-side EQ will just help you get around that. So let's go back to our example. If we take a look at the vocals and the flutes, look at that space, like it's just super wide, all this space in the middle. If I go back to putting these straight down the middle, let's take a look at what it was like before. It's tighter, it's kind of more down the middle, and then after, just feels way bigger, you know? Now let's focus in on the panning. We've got these two flutes, one's going to the left, one to the right, and then the vocals are just down the middle. You know, they're just sort of bouncing off the headphones now, you know, they're moving around a little bit. And then, yeah, let's look at that back to front panning. I'm just going to take the reverb off these flutes. Very dry. A little bit of back panning, put some reverb on both of them. A little bit of vintage Valhalla. They almost sit with the vocal as well, a little bit cleaner, the vocal chop. And then last thing, because we've got these two flutes bouncing off each other, we can do a bit of mid-side EQing. Essentially just ducking those middle frequencies, those mono frequencies, and boosting the stereo frequencies. So this is kind of what it looks like. We've got a midpoint, ducking the mids. We've got a side point here, boosting. Let me exaggerate this. It's almost flat, super stereo, and then without. It kind of comes back more to the middle. And with all those techniques in check, here's how Seppi's Melodies turned out at day 30. So in just 4 weeks, Seppi went from really cluttered, overlayered, muddy sounding melodies to clean, spacious, and just really pro sounding melodies. And yeah, here's what Seppi had to say.
I found that limiting myself to 3 instruments allowed me to, one, understand that you don't need a lot in a beat. It also reduced overthinking and indecisiveness. Call and response, it made my loops and beats more interesting sounding, made them sound like there was a lot more going on than what actually was there, and it made me more creative in a sense. And the mixing polished my sound. It made it sound cleaner, bigger as well. So yeah, man, for the past few months, I've grown a lot, and I can't wait to see where else we go.
Now, if you feel kind of stuck in your music production journey and you just want some more guidance, some feedback and mentorship, then I do have a few spots available on my mentorship program. So if that sounds like you, then feel free to reach out through the first link in the description. And if not, that's totally cool. Watch this video next because I give you my exact blueprint on how I'd get really good at music production if I was starting completely from scratch.